Hello there, and welcome to Sleepless Scrolls, where history hums gently in the background and your thoughts begin to soften with the night. Tonight, we're beginning a peculiar little journey, one that hums, croaks, and echoes just beneath the veil of time. You've clicked on a story about frogs, but not just any frogs. These are the quiet keepers of time, ancient little metronomes that clicked and chirped long before humanity built a sundial or whispered the word midnight. So before we dive in, let me ask you something. What time is it where you are? Are you tucked in already, lights low, or are you lying there, still pretending that one last scroll won't cost you your morning? No judgment here. You probably won't survive this episode fully awake anyway. We have a way of drifting off together, don't we? As always, if you like stories that are both strange and soothing, don't forget to tap that like button, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Now close your eyes if you can, breathe out slowly, and follow me. You're walking. Your feet don't make a sound, not here. The ground is soft, not quite mud, not quite moss, something in between. A kind of ancient sponge that has soaked up centuries of moonlight and rain. The air is thick and perfumed with leaf damp and decay, that earthy richness only swamps seem to understand. You've arrived at an old marsh. It could be anywhere. A prehistoric wetland under a milk-white moon. You don't know how you got here, but that doesn't matter anymore. Time isn't tracked here in numbers. It never has been. Instead, it begins with a chirrup, then another, then three in quick succession, followed by a long, deep crack that echoes across the still water. You stop walking, you listen, because here, long before clocks, before towers with bells, before the tick-tock of wood and iron, time was known by sound. And the frogs, those soft-bellied musicians, were the keepers of it. Not in the way you're used to, not in minutes and seconds and blinking screens. No, this is a rhythm older than measurement. The frogs sing the heat, they chant the humidity, they pulse with the pressure of the air. Their bodies are tiny instruments for the environment itself, and over millennia people noticed. They began to listen, closely. In this place, maybe 10,000 years ago, an elder crouches beside you. His skin is painted with river ash. He carries no lantern. He doesn't need one. The frogs tell him all he needs to know. The first wave of croaking begins just after the sun drops. These are the high chirpers, tree frogs, some no bigger than your thumb. Their calls are frantic, peaking with the purple light of dusk. They're the ones who call dinner time, the first hour of night. Then when the humidity drops just slightly, another chorus begins, throatier, slower. The marsh frogs begin. Their croaks mean the fire should be lit. Their song says, "It's safe to sit. The snakes are asleep. The spirits have settled." Later still, long after most humans would sleep, a third kind begins. The bullfrogs. Deep, wide-throated beings with voices that carry across water like fog. Their arrival, the elder says, means it's the hour of dreams. The moon has passed its highest point. The tide is already pulling back. You look out across the marsh. Sure enough, the layers of sound are distinct. Separate, but layered like music. A slow symphony of weather, temperature, and time. It's not just beautiful, it's practical. Because frogs, unlike clocks, are sensitive. They don't sing by chance, their voices change by region, season, even minute fluctuations in barometric pressure. Scientists still argue whether frogs sing to mark territory, attract mates, or respond to environmental cues. The truth is likely all three, woven in a pattern too old and too intricate for us to fully decode. But the elders didn't need to decode it. They felt it. They lived aside that sound. You sit now, you don't know how long it's been. The fire beside the elder flickers, reflected in the slow ripple of water. Insects buzz low and thick, but somehow their sound folds beneath the frogs, and still the croaking continues. You ask softly how he knows the time. He doesn't answer right away, just smiles and points. Across the water, a willow tree leans low, brushing its fingers across the pond surface. The frogs gathered at its base begin a new call, a higher pitch, sharper. The elder leans in. That one only sings when the sky is cooled enough for fog, he whispers. That means the middle of the night is passing. And he's right. Mist is curling over the water, rising like breath from a V's surface. You realise somehow he doesn't use these sounds as metaphors. He uses them as a measurement. This frog means this hour. That frog means that cloud cover. And others did too. In South America, tribes used frog choruses to prepare for migration. Certain calls meant the rain was 2 days away. Others warned of drought. In the Philippines, villagers once placed bowls near rice paddies not to catch frogs, but to better hear them. The echo of their song, whether it came straight or delayed, measured the thickness of the evening fog. And then there were farmers in Ghana who swore they could predict crop planting days by the pitch of a single chorus. They even gave the frogs nicknames, mimicking their calls in lullabies. These aren't isolated myths, they are global habits. But you're still here in the swamp, with the elder beside you, and now the frogs are quieting slowly, like a music box unwinding. One by one the calls begin to soften, replaced by distant bird whistles, morning birds. So the elder stands. He places a hand on your shoulder. He doesn't speak, because he doesn't need to. The frogs have already told you. The night is over, and the next chapter is waiting. You step forward now, your feet barely disturbing the silver mist curling across the path. The swamp behind you fades, not just in sound, but in memory. The frog's chorus lingers like the hum of a forgotten lullaby tucked somewhere behind your ears. And then there's warmth. It isn't sudden. It comes like a rising sigh, the kind the air makes just before dawn in the tropics. You blink slowly, though your eyes may already be closed, and the world tilts into a new place. Now you are in Cambodia. Long ago, in a low-slung village perched just above the waterline. Stilt houses lean gently on bamboo legs, swaying in rhythm with the breeze. The whole place floats, not on water but on sound. You can hear it even before you see anything, frogs. They're everywhere, hidden beneath woven mats, nestled in the shade of banana leaves, croaking from clay pots half filled with rain. Some tiny enough to balance on a child's finger, others round and squat with bellies like hollow drums. You find yourself sitting cross-legged with an old Khmer woman. She's sharpening a fish hook with the edge of a stone, her gestures slow, meditative. Children dart in and out of view, carrying woven baskets and giggling behind their hands. But you and the woman are still. She turns her face toward the distance. Listen, she says softly. It's almost the second hour. You strain to hear something new, but to your ears it's just more frogs. More chirping, more croaking, more pulsing rhythms that blend into one another, like river waves. But to her, it's a schedule. You begin to pick it out, slowly. There's one frog, the kakakang, that begins with a low trill, like a coin dropped into water. That's the wake-up call. It starts just before the sun kisses the tops of the sugar palms. That call means time to prepare the rice. Another joins in a little later, a tiny brown frog with a high-pitched, almost panicked chirp. When the women hear that one, it means it's nearly time to begin the incense offering at the family altar. And just before noon, the chorus changes again. The frogs retreat into the shade, their song thinning out like tea leaves at the bottom of a cup. This lull is known. It signals rest. Time to nap. Time to let the rice cook itself. It isn't guesswork, it's generations of listening. These villagers have learned the nuances of croaks the same way others learn the hands of a clock. Each shifting chorus reveals temperature, light, humidity, wind direction. Even the monks at the pagoda tucked further down the riverbank adjust their prayer cycles according to the frog song. You imagine them walking barefoot between lotus ponds, robes brushing the dewy grass, ears tilted toward the water. Not in meditation alone, but in measurement. There is a kind of precision to it, but not the cold precision of gears and ticking. It's a living kind of timing, fluid, responsive, soft. You follow the old woman through the village now. She shows you her pond dug by her grandfather. "We keep the frogs," she says with a grin, "not for eating, for knowing." You notice the jars placed at the edge of the house. Terracotta bowls, ceramic tubes. Each has a slightly different acoustic shape. She explains they amplify the frog sounds, bounce them through the wooden beams of the home, a natural sound system, so she doesn't miss anything even when sleeping. You ask whether the younger generation still listens. She shakes her head slowly. Some do, some don't. They look at phones now, but when the towers fail, they'll remember the frogs. It's a strange thing, isn't it? To trust time not to metal and wires, but to tiny throats and wet skin. Still, you can't deny it works. You hear the change yourself now, frogs calling out in pairs, not singly. She nods. "Evening," she says. They've begun courting. And sure enough, the light is shifting. The shadows grow longer, more golden. A breeze ripples across the water's surface, disturbing the lily pads just enough to make them look like they're dancing. And then something unexpected. The woman calls out a name. A boy runs up, carrying a small bamboo flute. "Listen," she says, motioning to him. "Play it like the frog." He does. And it's uncanny. The notes mimic the local frogs with stunning precision. She tells you children are taught these calls as part of their early music lessons, frog mimicry, to understand the rhythm of the land, to respect it. One of the frogs she points to is called the fleeing neek, which translates roughly to ghost singer. This frog only calls when the air pressure drops dramatically, just before rain, or sometimes before an earthquake. Scholars still debate whether these frogs can actually detect seismic shifts, or whether it's mere coincidence. Some argue it's about barometric pressure. Others point to the frog's sensitivity to electric fields in the atmosphere. But here in this village, there's no debate. When the ghost singer croaks, you bring the laundry in and tie the boats to shore. You trust the frog. The boy finishes playing. You thank him with a smile. He nods shyly and disappears behind a curtain of hanging vines. And just like that, the woman begins to prepare a kettle of lotus root tea. The scent floats around you, mixing with the dusk, the frogs, the stillness. You're not quite sure of the time anymore. But that's the point, isn't it? Here, time is not an arrow, not a countdown, not a stressor. It is a wave, a cycle, a rhythm performed by thousands of wet throats and slippery bodies echoing their part in an ancient performance. As the last bit of sunlight flickers on the edge of the pond, you close your eyes and listen once more. A slow croak, a high trill, a low rumbling gloop. That one, the woman says, only sings when the moon is exactly half full, and somehow you believe her. The pond fades. The frogs continue croaking somewhere behind your thoughts, like a rhythm too old to silence. But the bamboo homes, the warm lotus tea, the barefoot boy with the bamboo flute, all of it dissolves into mist. And once again the air shifts. It grows heavier, wetter, the kind of thick that settles in your lungs and makes every breath feel like it travelled through a layer of moss. The sounds return slowly, not all at once. First there's the hum of cicadas, constant and shrill, rising like steam from the jungle floor. Then there's the low, padded beat of distant drums, soft, ceremonial, barely there. You're in the ancient Mayan lowlands now. Stone pyramids rise above the canopy, their staircases swallowed in vine and fog. You pass beneath wide-leafed trees, where howler monkeys call to the twilight. And all around you frogs. So many frogs, hiding in tree hollows, nestled in limestone basins carved by rain, croaking from within the mouths of stone jaguar sculptures, where water pools and echoes. You're led by a girl. Her tunic is embroidered with maize and stars. She doesn't speak much, but her eyes are sharp, scanning the underbrush, the branches, the sky. She's young, but she knows this place. You follow her to a clearing. There's a circle of carved stones, smooth, polished, almost glowing with the moisture of the air. She gestures for you to sit, then points to a flat stone in the middle. Carved into it, a series of small curled symbols, glyphs. One in particular stands out. It looks like a frog, wide-mouthed with spiral eyes and legs tucked under. The girl points to it, then to the jungle around you. You listen. The frogs are calling again, but these are different. The sound isn't constant. It comes in pulses, rhythms, bursts, almost like coded messages. The Mayans, the girl explained softly, believed that frog song was tied to the moon's breath. A poetic phrase, yes, but not without weight. Archaeologists have uncovered glyphs that describe the croaking of frogs as signals of the moon's phase and the rains to come. She leans closer to the stone and draws a line with her finger. This croak means the waxing moon is nearly full. Another croak means the rain will fall in 3 days. Another still, a double-note trill, means the maize should be planted tomorrow. And again you listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole body. The air is so saturated with life, and every chirp feels like it's pressing gently against your skin. You learn that the Mayans didn't just listen to frogs for weather. They tracked time by them. Each species sang at a particular part of the lunar cycle. Some only called during new moons, others in the final days of a waning gibbous. It was a clock written in sound, a timekeeper for those who watched the skies and lived by the fields. She tells you of the rain frog, small and unassuming, yet sacred. Its sudden song meant that Chaak, the rain god, was coming. During droughts, priests would seek these frogs out and move them to temple courtyards, hoping to hear them sing. If they croaked, it was a sign. If they remained silent, ceremonies would grow more desperate. There's a debated carving in Copan, your guide tells you, one that scholars still argue over. It shows a man wearing a frog mask, seated on a throne of clouds. Some believe he was a priest of time, others say a ceremonial weather teller. But the most romantic theory, he was the frog speaker, a person believed to understand the croaks of amphibians the way others read the stars. Scientists still question the accuracy of such frog-based prediction systems. Was it truly lunar influence? Or were the frogs simply reacting to changes in humidity and air pressure that coincided with lunar phases? The debate lingers. But here in the jungle, none of that matters. The girl shrugs as if to say, does it really matter if it worked? You shift on the stone, feeling the way the jungle presses in around you. Humid, verdant, alive. Everything is growing, crawling, breathing. Time doesn't march here. It unfolds like a leaf. She rises, brushing moss from her knees, and beckons you to follow her again. You walk quietly through an archway of stone and vine, up ancient steps, slick with time, and at the top of the temple the world opens. A wide platform with a view of the jungle stretching in every direction. Tree canopies ripple in the wind like a green ocean. And then you hear it. Not one frog, but a chorus, a harmony. The frogs here seem to call in waves. One side of the jungle begins, a high, warbling rhythm. Then another answers from the opposite side, a lower pitch, drawn out and resonant. Then silence. Then the pattern repeats. The girl smiles. That's how we know the third hour of the night, she says. You raise an eyebrow. She explains, the frogs here don't just sing randomly. They sing in shifts, in pulses that seem to follow a pattern so precise that priests once aligned ritual timings with them. There are even rumours that calendars were cross-checked by listening to the frogs over cycles of moons. You lie back against the warm stone, eyes closing, and imagine it. A civilization guided by stone sun and frog song. Croaks instead of bells. Rhythms instead of numbers. It makes sense in a way. Frogs respond instantly to atmospheric change. Their bodies are barometers. Their voices rise when storms come near and fall in drought. And because they're sensitive to temperature shifts, they form a kind of auditory climate clock, telling the time not in minutes but in movements of the earth itself. As you lie there, you feel the temple stone beneath your back. It's warm from the day's sun. You imagine the ancient priest standing where you are now, eyes closed, listening just as you are. And the frogs, they keep singing. They've always sung. From the first trickle of rain on jungle leaves to the last sigh of the waning moon, they mark every moment. One frog begins a sharp trill again. The girl turns and whispers, "That means the moon is nearly at its peak." She's right. The moon has climbed high above the canopy now, bright and full, casting a blue glow over everything below. Frogs gather at the temple's base in carved stone pools filled with moonlit water. Their voices ring upward. Time is not counted, it is felt. And here, high above the jungle, you feel it moving through you, slow, ancient, and very much alive. You don't walk down the temple stairs, you glide. The jungle breathes you out and the wind carries you, not fast, not jarringly, but with the gentle rhythm of something familiar and remembered, as though the earth itself is whispering you onward, and the sound fades. The Mayan frogs, with their lunar harmonies, their breath-time symphonies, recede into the green silence. The air grows drier, cooler. Sand replaces soil beneath your bare feet. You are in ancient Egypt now. The Nile spreads out before you, dark and vast, reflecting a sky that has not yet turned blue. There's a stillness here, an expectant pause, like the world is holding its breath. You feel the difference immediately. The air is sacred, measured, as though it's waiting for the river to speak first, and speak it does, but not in rushing water, not in thunder. It speaks first through frogs. You walk along the bank near a cluster of papyrus reeds and hear them, soft, rhythmic croaks, not the thunderous chorus of the Mayan lowlands, nor the chirping madness of Cambodia's night ponds. These are slower, wiser, predictive. A priest stands near you, his linen robe rustling like parchment in the breeze. He doesn't look at you, but you follow his gaze, across the water, where frogs sit nestled in the mud, eyes wide and unblinking. "These are the sons of Heket," he murmurs. You've heard the name before, Heket, the frog-headed goddess of fertility and rebirth. She who was present at every birth, she who breathed life into the first gasp of a newborn child. The priest explains that her sacred animal, the frog, was revered not just for symbolism but for timing. Because the frogs came with the floods. The Nile, that vast ribbon of life cutting through the desert, flooded every year like clockwork. And just before the water rose, the frogs began to croak. The ancient Egyptians noticed. Of course they did. They were meticulous people, star readers, time recorders. They built calendars based on Sirius, carved temples aligned with the solstice. But before the stars blinked their messages, the frogs had already begun to sing. They called it the inundation, the most important time of year, when the Nile overflowed its banks, leaving behind thick black silt. Kemet, they called it, the source of all fertility and life. And who arrived first to announce it? The frogs. You crouch beside the water now, the reeds rustle. Frogs blink lazily from their perches. One croaks, low, guttural, almost bored. Another answers with a hollow call from deeper in the marsh. The priest listens closely. He points. "That one," he says, "croaks when the river has reached the shoulder of the first gate." You glance up. A series of small stone markers line the embankment. Measuring stones, nilometers they're called. You hadn't noticed them before, but now you see. The frogs are scattered along these points, almost like guardians. Each point marks a stage of the flood, and with each stage a different frog appears. Some call only when the water kisses the lower step. Others emerge only when the flow has reached the temple's edge. The priests would listen, night after night, not just for ritual, but for survival. If the frogs called too early, panic. If they were late, dread. A missed flood could mean famine. A late one could mean disease. The frogs, in a way, were the first alerts. You walk now along a canal lined with limestone. The scent of lotus and wet stone fills your nose. You pass homes made from sun-baked mud brick, their roofs woven from palm fronds. A child runs by laughing, a frog cupped gently in her hands. Her grandmother watches from a mat by the door and calls out, "Set it down, you'll make it forget the hour." You smile. There is something strangely reverent about how they treat frogs here. Not as pets, not as pests, but as living timepieces. The priest beside you tells a story. Long ago, during a particularly erratic flood season, the scribes lost count of the moon's cycles. The skies were cloudy, the stars obscured, the records were blurred. But the frogs, they croaked day by day with steady rhythm. And so the farmers began to plant not by the stars, but by the frogs. It is said the harvest that year was one of the best in memory. Scientists today still question how frogs could sense the Nile's rise before it was visible. Some argue it's vibration, minute tremors in the earth, carried up the river from the mountains of Ethiopia. Others say it's barometric shifts. Still others believe the frogs respond to changes in humidity and soil saturation long before humans can detect them. The priest shrugs. "The frogs know," he says. "That is enough." And as you continue, the croaking increases, not louder but more layered. You begin to hear them in patterns, some 3 croaks at a time, others in long, unbroken drones. The frogs closest to the temple seem quieter, measured, disciplined, as if they too obey the order of sacred grounds. You pause at a bas-relief carving etched into a temple wall. It shows a woman mid-childbirth surrounded by frogs. Heket's arms extend above her, frog limbs outstretched in blessing. A midwife kneels beside her, one hand held up as if listening. The priest leans in. Frogs mark not only the floods, but also the hours of labour. You blink, he nods solemnly. In some villages, women gave birth to the rhythm of frog croaks. Midwives would say 3 croaks to push, 2 to breathe. It was our lullaby, our metronome. And as strange as it sounds, it makes sense here. In this world so full of rhythm, it's no surprise they mapped life by the music of frogs. You rest now beside a small inlet where water lilies bloom by moonlight. A frog perches near your knee. It stares at you as if it's been watching this entire time. It croaks, once. The priest doesn't flinch. "That's the final hour," he says softly. "Time to sleep." You lean back against the temple stone. The frogs croak on, but now they seem slower, sleepier, as if even they are settling down. You think about how this entire civilization rose and fell with the tide of a river, and that river sang its warnings, its invitations, and its lullabies through the throats of frogs. Time here is not ticking, it is pulsing, and you feel yourself sinking to it. One breath, one croak, one dream, the temple fades behind you. You feel the cool stone of Egypt drift away like a long-held breath, and the scent of lotus is replaced by something heavier, spicier, as though the air itself has steeped overnight in cardamom, sandalwood, and the coming promise of rain. The sky above is not quite dark, but not quite light either. It glows a smoky purple. Thick clouds move across it like slow ships on a black ocean, and the sound of thunder is so far away, it feels like it's happening in someone else's dream. You are in India now, not the modern humming electric India of cities and horn-blown traffic, but a softer, older one, monsoon India. Before time was kept by paper calendars or steel clocks, when the sky told stories and the frogs filled in the silence between them. You walk through the monsoon plains, where rice paddies stretch like sheets of green glass. The water in them is shallow, warm and still, perfect for frogs. The kind of frogs that don't just sing, they chant. The mud beneath your feet is soft but not unpleasant. A wide-footed farmer in a loose cotton lungi nods at you as he walks by, barefoot, humming to himself. On his shoulder is a sickle, but he's not working right now. Not yet. Too early, he mutters. The mandukas hadn't started. You glance around. There are frogs here, certainly. You can hear them in the distance, small, repetitive chirps. But he's waiting for something else. The mandukas. The frog chorus of India has been documented in Vedic hymns. Yes, actual scripture. One of the oldest religious texts in the world, the Rig Veda, contains an entire hymn that mimics the sound of frogs. Scholars still debate why. Some believe it was meant to praise the arrival of the rains. Others say it was an allegory for the rebirth of life. Still others suggest the ancient Brahmins were comparing their own Vedic chants to the natural music of frogs, both rising in pitch, repeating rhythm, calling for renewal. But here in the fields the interpretation is simpler. "When the big frogs sing," the farmer says, "it's time for the lamps." He's referring to the small oil lamps that line temple courtyards each night, but no one lights them by the clock. They wait. Because just as the sky goes dark, a certain species of frog, broad-mouthed and full-throated, begins to croak. Not randomly, not in isolation, but in a kind of synchronized duet. One frog begins, another answers, then another, then hundreds. The sound rolls across the fields like thunder just beneath the soil. It's a low, wet, almost yawning croak. And it comes at the exact moment when day finally gives up and hands itself over to night. You walk now toward a temple compound, where stone elephants guard the steps and the scent of incense is already curling out from its doorways. The head priest stands near a banyan tree, one ear tilted toward the fields. "They've begun," he says, smiling faintly. "It's almost time for the second flame." He doesn't mean candlelight, he means a ritual. The lighting of a second ceremonial flame that marks the official start of the evening prayers. And while the temple has a water clock tucked away in a stone alcove, it is seldom used. "That clock doesn't smell the rain," he chuckles, "but the frogs do." You sit near the stone pool at the temple's heart. It's rectangular, filled with water lilies and absolutely alive with frog song. The croaking rises and falls like breathing. A monk approaches with a brass bowl and sits beside you. He explains that this pool is not just ornamental, it's a spiritual timekeeper. In the hot season, the frogs go silent, he says, swirling water with the twig. That's how we know to begin the sun prayers. The absence of frogs is a kind of clock too. And when they return, it's a sign, not just of rain, but of rhythm, of balance restored. Frogs were so respected as time indicators that some villagers used to build tiny frog shrines at the edge of rice paddies, not to worship them directly, but to honour their usefulness. One such shrine, the monk tells you, featured a carved frog holding a lotus inscribed with the Sanskrit words, "He who croaks commands." The phrase might sound strange, even humorous, but here it is literal. There's a story he tells you slowly and with a small smile. Once, during a drought, the elders of a village grew desperate. The frogs were silent. The monsoon was late, so they held a marriage ceremony. For frogs. Yes, frogs. They caught 2 large frogs, one male, one female, and adorned them in garlands of marigold. Villagers danced. Musicians played. Prayers were chanted, and the frogs were married beneath a banana leaf canopy. That night the frogs croaked in unison, and the next morning the sky broke open and it rained. Is it myth? Maybe, but it happened again and again, even in recent times. Scientists debate whether it's coincidence or if frog sensitivity truly tracks moisture in ways we don't yet understand. But the people here don't debate, they listen. You listen now too to the frogs croaking near the pool. They're slower now, lazier. The ceremony is done, the lamps are lit, the night is deepening. Time in this place does not live in square numbers. It unfolds like a lotus blooming in warm water. You lie back on the warm stone, the hum of frogs echoing in your chest like a heartbeat. And for a moment, you forget the sun ever moved at all. The stone under your back is still warm, but the scent in the air changes. The heaviness of rain-drenched India lifts, carried away on a breeze laced with plum blossom and tea steam. The sounds change too. The frogs do not vanish, but they're joined now by something sharper, higher, and more persistent. A steady, shimmering buzz. It's not unpleasant. It rings like glass humming under a fingertip, endless and unwavering. You open your eyes into ancient China, where the summer air vibrates with sound. You find yourself standing at the edge of a riverbank in the province once known as Shu. Bamboo forests rise to your right, terraced rice fields stretch to your left. A scholar sits on a stone platform ahead, his robe wide and flowing like a cloud tied at the waist. He is fanning himself slowly, his scroll lies open, his eyes are closed, and all around him is sound, frogs and cicadas. At first you don't understand why these two voices matter, but soon you begin to notice what he already knows. They're competing. You hear the frogs first, deep-throated, round-timed, each croak spaced like a heartbeat. Then the cicadas, a long, metallic whine, sharp and unbroken, cutting through the evening like the blade of a sword. The scholar opens one eye and looks at you. Cicadas tell time by the sun, he murmurs. Frogs by the rain. Which would you trust? You sit beside him on a wooden bench shaded by a weeping willow. He pours tea into a cup the size of a thimble without asking. You sip. It tastes like leaves remembering a fire. And then he continues. In the Tang dynasty, he says, it was believed that frogs and cicadas were celestial clocks, living indicators of yin and yang. The frogs ruled the water hours, the cicadas the heat. You listen, it makes sense now. The frogs here croak most just after the rains, when the earth cools and the rice paddies shimmer with fresh moisture. The cicadas begin when the sun hangs long over the mountains, making the air crackle with dryness. Ancient Chinese almanacs record these voices in careful brushstrokes. When the frogs grow quiet and the cicadas begin, the 7th solar term has arrived. This was not poetry, it was calendar. China's traditional lunar-solar calendar was divided into 24 mini-seasons, each named for subtle shifts in temperature, wind and sound. The arrival of frogs marked grain in ear, a season of rapid growth. Cicadas sang during slight heat and great heat, when midday shadows shortened and rice roots thickened. The scholar beside you takes another sip of tea. My teacher once said, he muses, that if you miss your bell, listen to a frog. If you miss the frog, listen to the leaf. And if all are silent, you've gone too far into the night. You smile, a small breeze lifts your sleeve, you hear frogs again, closer now, echoing off the curved eaves of the scholar's home. One croak, then two, then silence, then a trio, perfectly spaced, like a spoken syllable repeated. You ask if the frogs were used to keep time for more than farming. He nods. Some monks would begin meditation at the first call of the mountain frog, he says. Its croak was said to cleanse the hour of thought. If it croaked again, they would rise. If not, they would sit until morning. In rural villages, the frogs marked dinner time. In ancient court gardens, they marked the changing of night shifts among the lantern keepers. You're led now through a bamboo grove, the sky above you turning gold. You pass a young boy kneeling beside a stone basin. He leans over it, ear pressed close to the water. A soft croak echoes inside. He counts softly on his fingers. The scholar smiles. Some children are taught to tell time before they're taught to write. He explains that certain frogs croak in predictable intervals. One in particular lets out a patterned rhythm. 3 slow, 2 fast, pause, repeat, like the ticking of a biological pendulum. It became known as the tea frog because servants used it to time the steeping of rare leaves. And while that might sound quaint now, it was taken seriously. One wrong count, one impatient lift of the teapot lid, and the tea might be considered ruined. Time and taste, the scholar says, were married by the frog. You walk now into a small scholar's pavilion, its walls lined with scrolls and bronze bells. There's a diagram pinned to one, drawn in brush and ink. It shows overlapping circles labelled with frog symbols, cicada glyphs, and small crescent moons. This, he says, was my grandfather's invention. He tried to create a frog-based calendar wheel. It tracked which frogs sang in which direction of the wind. You lean in, it's detailed. Impossible, perhaps, but beautiful. Of course, he laughs softly. Scientists still argue whether frogs croak at regular intervals. Some say it's too random. Others say we just haven't learnt their grammar. You both grow quiet. The sun dips behind the bamboo, and the temperature drops. The cicadas fall abruptly silent. But the frogs, they begin to sing, soft, low, contented. The world sighs around you. You see, he says, cicadas talk to the sun, frogs talk to the dark. You lie down on a woven mat. The scholar sets an incense stick beside you and lets it burn slowly. Above you the moon rises pale and full behind the trees. A frog croaks once, then again. You count without meaning to. Not because you need to know the time, but because something inside you recognizes that the hour has changed. You don't fall asleep, you drift. Not down or back or through, but into. As though the scholar's voice, the incense curling like a dragon's book, and the frog song folding over your ears, have become a kind of lullaby made not to end, but to carry. The bamboo cracks gently behind you, and the frogs don't stop singing. They simply fade beneath new voices. Drums, deep, low, talking drums. They don't echo like thunder. They roll like breath. Like language without words, and alongside them, layered and pulsing through the silence between the beats, frogs. You open your eyes slowly. It is dusk in West Africa. You're standing near the edge of a vast, silvery wetland, where papyrus reeds and low-slung fig trees lean over mirror-still water. The air smells of earth. Not dirt, earth. Alive and damp and rich with something very old. The frogs are everywhere, but invisible. You feel them before you see them. Beneath the soil, in the grasses, behind the small thatch homes built on stilts. Someone steps beside you, an elder in a long indigo robe, embroidered with river patterns. Her feet are bare, her hair silver. She carries a walking stick shaped like a spiral. Listen close, she whispers. They're telling you what month it is. You close your eyes. The frog song is rhythmic, almost hypnotic, not chaotic or overlapping, but ordered, cyclical. This one, she says, pointing toward the reed beds, comes during the first moon after harvest. They call it the shepherd's croak. It means the soil is ready for planting again. You glance toward the water, where a cluster of frogs perch on floating wood, their throats inflating and deflating like breathing drums. They croak slowly. Once, pause, then again. The rhythm is steady, like footsteps or heartbeats. She nods. Time is walking. In this part of West Africa, among the Dogon, Mande and other peoples, frogs were not just rain-callers, they were keepers of cosmic rhythm. You walk with her now, following a narrow path of raised earth above the waterline. Children play nearby, their laughter blending with frog song. One child mimics the croak perfectly, the others cheer. They learn young, the Eldsman says, because there is no calendar in the village, just the pond. The community's seasonal knowledge was once kept entirely in frog voices. The elders listen not just to their tone but to their position. A low croak near the northern pond meant the yams would root early. A higher pitched trill from the river bend meant the fish would arrive within 3 sunsets. Even the height of the frog's call mattered. She explains, when they croak from the ground, it's planting season. But when they climb trees and sing from above, we know the floods are coming. And sure enough, you look, and there is a frog perched on the low branch of a mango tree, singing its warning into the thickening dusk. You ask her if anyone still follows these signs. She looks at you, her eyes gleaming in the moonlight now. Some of us do, she says. The sky may lie, the frogs don't. She tells you of the sacred crossing, a ritual held once a year when the dry paths disappear and water floods the lowlands. During this time the villagers wait, not for a date, not for a star, but for the 3-note frog. A rare species, she says, that sings a triad call only once each year. When it sings, the ritual may begin. It is always at night, she tells you, always between the last breath of the crescent moon and the first blink of the new one. You imagine it. Families gathered in boats, carrying lanterns shaped like leaves. Children whispering stories of the frog spirit, who walks across the river on invisible bridges made from sound. And above them all, the soft 3-note lullaby guiding their way. It's not a fairy tale, it's a clock, one that lives. The elder guides you deeper into the wetlands now. The ground becomes softer, and the frogs louder. Their calls ripple out in concentric rings, as though time itself is spinning from the centre of this marshy world. She stops and kneels. This place, she says, is called the listening circle. There's no structure, just a wide, shallow pond surrounded by smooth stones. No markings, no bells. But when you sit, you understand. The acoustics are perfect. Every croak echoes back in stereo. It's as though you're sitting inside the mouth of the land itself, hearing time spoken aloud. The elder closes her eyes and hums softly with the frogs. Her body rocks gently, keeping their pace. You notice something strange now. The frogs are not random. They're taking turns. One species calls, then it stops, another takes over. Their patterns rise and fall like the breath of a giant. The transitions are so smooth they feel orchestrated. She tells you the night is divided here, not into hours, into voices. First the earth-voiced frogs, then the high-water singers, then the tree-echo croakers, then the whisperers of the mud. Each group sings for about an hour and a half, then falls silent. Then the next begins. By the time all have sung, the night has passed. Time has moved, and so have you. She tells you of a boy who once tried to chart the frog's schedule on bark parchment. He built a whole clock face, made not of numbers, but frog throats. He didn't get it all right, she says, smiling, but he got close. Scientists later claimed he was tracking circadian amphibian rhythms, natural biological cycles that react to light, pressure and sound. But he said he was just listening to the pond. You lie back now, resting in the circle. The frogs sing all around you, and the elder hums again, matching their tones with uncanny accuracy. Her voice rises into the night like incense, like memory. The frogs are always singing, she whispers, even when we're too loud to hear them. And you wonder how many clocks in your own world have gone unheard. How many voices have been telling time in the background while you watch numbers blink on a glowing screen? Because here, in this place of song and soil and moonlight, time is not a number. It is a language, and tonight you are learning to speak it. The night deepens. The listening circle fades gently behind you, but its echoes linger, like a song heard just before sleep, soft and close to the skin. You don't walk this time. You don't glide. You arrive, as though your breath takes shape and becomes the very fog rising from a cool, still lake. And you are in Turtle Island now, what we now call North America. The air smells of pine and sage. The ground beneath you is spongy, thick with moss and fallen needles. Somewhere nearby a stream gurgles over stone, steady as a heartbeat. The stars are bright here, so many they feel near, as though you could pluck one down and hold it between your fingers. And then you hear them, the frogs, not loud at first. Just one, a low, hollow pulse from a marsh beyond the trees, then another, farther off, then two more in tandem, like flutes tuning to each other before a ceremony. You walk slowly through tall grass that sways against your shins, brushing you like a memory. You approach a wide silver marsh ringed by cattails and cedar. And there, seated near a fire that doesn't smoke, is an elder. Wrapped in a fur-lined robe, carved staff beside them, they look up and nod without surprise. "I thought you might come through this way," they say. They pat the earth beside them, and you sit. The frogs croak behind the fire, their song soft, almost sacred. The elder doesn't speak for a while. You both just listen. The quiet is not empty. It is rich, filled with things that can only be felt in stillness. Finally, they begin. Frogs, they say, are the voice between the worlds. You tilt your head. In our series, they continue, the frog is the one who can cross from water to land and back again, the only creature that's at home in two elements, so it watches and speaks. It knows things we forget when we're too busy walking in straight lines. You ask if frogs were used to tell time. The elder chuckles. Time is the one thing they never stop telling. They explain that in many indigenous nations, Ojibwe, Salish, Tlingit, Creek, Navajo and others, the frogs were season markers. Their voices signalled when the sap began to rise in the trees, when the fish moved upstream, when the first berries swelled. One tribe called the first frog Song of Spring the Waking Song. Another believed that frogs carried the cries of the snowmelt, calling forth the green. You listen now as the marsh grows louder. The frogs have begun a kind of wave song. One croaks, then another responds from across the water, then two more rise in duet, then quiet, then it begins again. The elder smiles. They're measuring the moon. You blink. They explain that certain frogs, especially the wood frog, sing in predictable lunar rhythms. Indigenous timekeeping wasn't done with clocks or Roman numerals. It was built around natural indicators, the bloom of a flower, the return of a bird, the song of a frog. The full moon of the frog song, they say, was the time to begin gathering. You think about that, a calendar of sound. Even more, you're told that each frog had a name, and some had stories that taught children how to listen to the land. One such story goes like this. Long ago there was no spring. The land moved from winter to fire, from ice to heat. The people suffered, not knowing when to plant, when to hunt. So the Creator sent Frog. He slept beneath the snow waiting. And when the right moon came, he sang. He didn't shout, he didn't roar. He sang softly, gently, and the earth heard. The ice melted, the rains came, and the people knew. Ever since, when Frog sings, the land wakes. The elder lets the fire crackle before continuing. Some say frogs can even tell the hour of death. You shiver slightly, not from fear, but from the truth of tone in their voice. They explain that in many tribes, when a loved one was passing, the family would listen to the frogs. If they sang clearly, the spirit would cross peacefully. If they went silent, the family would wait, delaying burial, keeping the body beside them, because the frog was believed to guide the soul. It was the sound of passage, and even now, when someone dies, some elders still go to the marsh and sit beside the water, not to cry, not to pray, but to listen. Some say the frogs carry their names back to the stars. You look up. The stars above the marsh shine brighter than before, as if listening too. You ask if the frogs sing year-round. The elder shakes their head. They sleep in winter, deep in the frozen sometimes, but they come back. Always. They return when the time is right. You can set your heart to it. You realise now that this is not just bedtime mythology. This is biological marvel. Some frog species in North America, like the wood frog of Alaska, freeze each winter. Their hearts stop, their blood turns to slush, they stop breathing. Scientists still marvel at how they survive, but come spring, when the snow begins to retreat, they thaw and they sing. You glance back at the marsh. One frog croaks, loud, singular, then silence. The elder nods solemnly. "That's the last hour. The hour of becoming." You lie back in the grass, and the firelight flickers behind your eyes. The frogs lull you deeper, their song wrapping around you like soft hides on a cold night. The elder speaks one last time. "The frog is not telling you what time it is," they whisper. "It's reminding you that time is a circle, and you are always somewhere in it." The frogs croak once more, and the stars exhale. You stir, but you do not wake. The stars of Turtle Island begin to fade behind your eyes, but the frogs remain. You hear them not as voices now, but as chimes, soft, round, echoing through a new kind of stillness. Thick, cool, holy stone. The air smells of wax and linen, of wood smoke and rain-soaked moss. You hear the flap of wings, ravens maybe, and the distant toll of a bronze bell swinging in some tower far above you. Welcome to medieval Europe. The fog here is different, denser. It clings to your skin like a half-spoken prayer. You walk along a cobbled path lined with low stone walls, the kind that lean inward with age, as though trying to remember something. Ahead, a monastery rises from the mist. It is not grand, not gilded with gold or towering in marble, but it is beautiful. Ivy crawls up its walls. Candles flicker in arched windows. You smell the unmistakable scent of parchment, drying herbs, and bread baking deep within its kitchen fires. But what leads you here isn't the bell, it's the frogs. You hear them before you see them, resting at the edge of a cloister pond tucked between weathered lilies and round, mossy stones. Their croaks are steady, not chaotic or choral, but measured, timely. A monk, hooded and barefoot, kneels beside the water. He is still, listening, not praying, not yet. His eyes are half closed. In his hand is a string of prayer beads, but they do not move. The frogs are his beads now. He looks up as you approach, nods. His voice is soft, worn like riverstone. "We have no clocks here," he says. "Only the frogs." You sit beside him, and he begins to explain. Long before mechanical clocks ruled the towers, monks of Europe relied on the natural world to guide the canonical hours, the sacred divisions of day and night, matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline. Each required prayer, ritual, chant, but knowing when to gather was an art. Some monasteries used water clocks, others relied on the changing quality of light. But in certain places, especially in the marshier lowlands, the wooded hollows, the still water valleys, the monks turn to frogs. The monk gestures toward the pond. "They sing at Lord's," he says, "just before the sun's first breath, even on cloudy days." And it's true. You listen. One croak, then three, then pause, then again. Always the same rhythm. You ask if it changes throughout the day. He nods. At prime they slow, at vespers they rise again, and when complina comes they sing once, then go still. He smiles faintly. You can sleep when the frogs do. You walk now through the monastery gardens, rows of thyme and rue and lavender, all glistening with dew. Frogs rest in the shady cracks between bricks. Their skin glistens like wet stone. One croaks as you pass, and a bell chimes in the distance. You check your own breath. They were in sync, and they were always right. In the absence of sunlight, on days lost to rain or fog, monks learn to mark time by the cadence of croaking, Some even kept frogs in pots near their study windows, not as pets, but as organic timepieces. One monk, the brother tells you, wrote in the margins of a psalter, "When the green bell sings thrice, I break my fast." Green bell was his name for a frog. There's a certain comfort in it. No harsh ticking, no iron weights, just the voice of something alive, something rooted in the earth's own rhythm. Scientists today would call it chorusing behavior, a coordinated vocalization among frog populations governed by temperature, light, and internal circadian cycles. But here, within these cloister walls, it was seen as something more. A gift. You walk now into the scriptorium where monks bend over vellum, copying text by candlelight. No one speaks, but you hear it, the faint croak from a small pool just outside the window. The monk closest to it doesn't look up, but his hand slows, pauses. He's waiting. Then, with the next croak, he resumes writing. You whisper, "Was that the signal?" He nods once. Time for ink to settle. It becomes clear that even within tasks, the frogs served as minute markers, their spaced-out calls providing structure in a world without watches. Outside, near a weathered sundial whose face is cracked and barely legible, you meet the abbot. He points toward the woods, where a small natural spring feeds into a mossy basin. That spring, he says, has a special frog. It sings only during the equinox. You raise your eyebrows. He nods, serious. It croaks once at dusk, and when it does, we know the days have balanced. Light and dark held equal for a breath. It has never failed. You walk to the edge of the spring. It's quiet now, sunlight slipping through pine branches above like gold ribbon. You crouch, wait, and there it is, one low, round croak. Then stillness, time marked by sound. You ask if people outside the monastery also used frogs to measure life. The abbot smiles. Peasants planted their barley when the marsh frogs first sang. Fishermen timed their net checks between croaks. Mothers whispered frog song to restless children, telling them, "When the frogs stop, so will you." Even fairy tales carried the echo. Stories of frog kings, of frogs transformed at midnight, of croaking creatures who knew the truth of time better than humans did. It wasn't just superstition, it was observation, passed through generations until it became truth. The abbot leads you back toward the chapel. The air is thick with twilight now, and the frogs have changed again. Their song is no longer casual, it is measured, steady, solemn. This is the hour of Vespers. Even the birds fall quiet, as if giving space for the green-voiced choir to lead. You step inside the stone chapel. The monks are seated. Candles flicker. No bells sound. No clocks tick. But outside the frogs sing, and the monks begin to chant. One rhythm follows the other. Human and amphibian, liturgy and life joined not by sound alone, but by intention. By trust in something older than glass and gear. You kneel, you breathe, you listen, and for one long moment you understand what it means to live in harmony with time, not to conquer it, but to accompany it. When the chanting ends, the frogs quiet too. The candles burn lower. The stone warms beneath you, and you sleep. Stone walls fade, candlelight dims. The croaks of cloistered frogs echo into silence. And then, salt. It arrives softly, carried by a wind warm and slow, laced with seaweed, rain and fire-cooled ash. You smell it before you see it, then hear it. Water lapping at the edges of wooden outriggers, the hiss of sand shifting beneath a rising tide, and, yes, frogs. Not the deep-throated bellows of Europe's marshes, nor the rain-summoning trills of West Africa. These are shorter, quicker, curious, almost. You open your eyes into a twilight island sky, pierced with stars so bright they seem to float just above the treetops. You are in the Pacific now, among the islands of Polynesia, the ridges of Melanesia, the high peaks of Micronesia. All around you, waves shimmer silver under the moon, and the frogs sing like time breathing between palm fronds. A woman stands beside a carved canoe on a quiet beach. Her skin glows in the moonlight. She is wrapped in bark cloth dyed with ash and flowers, her hair braided with shells and small dried blossoms. She places a hand over her heart, then points inland toward the mountain where the frogs live. "They're singing," she says. "We sail soon." You blink. Sail? How could frogs know such a thing? But then you remember, this is not your clock, it's theirs, and they've been keeping it far longer than you have. She walks with you into the forest. The path winds gently upward, cut with roots and lined with torch-lit stones. As you climb, the frogs grow louder. The woman begins to hum along, matching their pace, her tune gentle and rhythmic. "They know the tides," she says, "the frogs, they always did." In ancient Polynesian voyaging traditions, frogs were more than symbols of fertility or luck. They were embedded in the pulse of the sea. Not all islands had native frogs, but those that did listened. They were said to sing just before the high tide, their voices lifting moments before the waters surged and pushing out a final croak before the waves retreated. Navigation masters, wayfinders, would lie awake at night in reed shelters, ears tuned to those rhythms, confirming star paths and swell memory with the voices of frogs echoing through the volcanic hollows. You crest a hill now, and in the moonlight see a crater filled with water, still as breath. Dozens of frogs call around its edge, spaced like sentinels. The woman kneels, offers a flower, then begins to speak, slow and soft. "Our ancestors called them moa-ele-ele," she says, "black chickens, not because they were birds, but because they greeted the sun, just as roosters did, only earlier." Indeed, she explains, the first frog croak was considered more sacred than the cock's crow. Roosters tell people it's morning, she says, but frogs tell the land. Islanders believe that when the frogs began, it meant the mana, the spiritual energy of the world, was realigning. A new day was rising, not just above, but within. Fishermen would wait for the frog song before launching their canoes, and women would wait for it before beginning the day's taro pounding. Some even believed, she tells you, that babies born during the frog hour would grow into navigators. She dips her hand in the crater water, then says almost in a whisper, "And when the frogs stop and storms are coming." You listen. Right now they are steady, rhythmic, predictable, but she tells of another pattern, one feared. A triple croak followed by silence. It was rare, but when it came, islanders would cancel voyages, bring in sails and warn villages. Elders said it was the frogs mimicking the waves that swallowed canoes. Scientists today say frogs can detect barometric pressure changes long before humans. Some species grow restless before storms, others change pitch, a few fall entirely silent. But for the people of the sea, no instruments were needed, just ears and trust. You descend the hill again, led by torchlight now. At the shore a canoe waits, its hull carved from breadfruit tree, its sail stitched from pandanus leaves. On the bow is a frog, carved, painted and smiling. You ask about it. "It's tradition," the woman says. "When we sail at night, we bring the frog with us." She explains, when travelling between islands, wayfinders not only watched stars and read currents, they listened. The presence of frogs on a new island meant water was near, drinkable, sheltered, safe, and the absence of frogs, a silence too wide, she says. We move on. Some oral histories even speak of frogs guiding explorers to volcanic springs, their croaks echoing down crater walls and drawing scouts toward fresh water. And in ceremony. Frogs sing at wedding, she says, smiling, and at deaths. You pause. She nods. Especially during death. It's how the spirit knows the tide is going out. She tells you one last thing as the wind picks up. Sometimes when I miss someone, I go to the crater. I wait for the frogs. When they croak, I answer. She lifts her chin, sings softly. 3 notes, rising, falling. And for a heartbeat, the frogs pause. Then they sing back. You lie in the canoe now, the waves cradling you. The sail flutters. The island glows behind you, and the frogs, so far now, still sing faintly. But there, always there, time here does not march forward. It drifts. It rides the wind and lingers in water bowls and sits beneath banana leaves waiting. You exhale, and the sea sings with frogs. The sea recedes. Not abruptly, not in a rush, but slowly, like a tide of memory pulling back into sleep. The canoe rocks gently beneath your spine. The stars above you begin to shiver and tilt, as if rearranging themselves for a new chapter. The frogs grow quieter, and then something changes. You feel air, thin, cool, carried by the hush of trees so high they pierce cloud. You've arrived in the Andes, not the dry cactus-lined valleys, but the cloud forests, where orchids drip from moss-covered branches and fog hugs the mountainsides like old breath that never left. The air is filled with the scent of wet stone orchids, earth and something else. Time, not clock time but ritual time, the kind etched into the stones of ancient terraces and whispered through the leaves by creatures who have always known when to sing. You hear it now, the frogs, not loud, not many, just a few high, fragile voices hidden in the leaf bore. Damp world around you. Their calls are soft, hollow-sounding, spaced out like footsteps across stone. One echoes from the edge of a stream, another answers from behind a bromeliad bloom. A woman with copper-grey braids and a woven wool cloak stands beside a small fire made of dried lichen and eucalyptus bark. She welcomes you with a nod, her voice low, deep and steady. You've come in the fog hour, she says. That's when they sing best. You follow her along a narrow stone path carved centuries ago into the mountainside. Orchids sway gently with every breath of wind. The frogs croak again, this time more in sync. The rhythm is unmistakable. They're keeping altitude, she explains. You pause. She smiles. In the Andes, the frogs don't just mark the seasons, they mark the heights. At every level of the mountain, a different species sings. Each one adapted to the thin air, the wet moss, the movement of clouds. She kneels and scoops water from a nearby spring into a carved stone bowl. You notice it's decorated with spirals and frog glyphs, ancient, worn by hand and rain. In the time of the Inca, she tells you, frogs were considered messengers, not just to the rain gods, but to the Apus, the mountain spirits. Each peak had its own protector, its own voice, and in many places, that voice was said to be the frog. They croak at dusk, she says. Always. That's when the Apus change their guard. You ask what she means. She motions toward the horizon. When one shadow climbs, another falls. That's when the frogs begin. Not before, never after. You listen. Indeed, there is something precise about the rhythm here. As the sun disappears behind a ridge, the frogs begin a new cadence. One slow croak, a pause, then 2 faster calls, then silence, repeat. 3 notes, she says. That means the solstice is close. You're skeptical, but she smiles knowingly. High in the Andes, indigenous farmers have long listened to frogs to time their planting and harvests. Even in the absence of modern instruments, they knew the earth was ready when a certain glass frog, transparent, delicate, began its midnight song. Some communities even referred to the frogs as the lungs of the land. Their return from hibernation meant the soil was breathing again. You follow the woman into a ceremonial garden. Low stone walls surround dozens of small terraces, each planted with maize, quinoa or herbs. A spring-fed channel runs through it all. In the centre, a circular pool. It ripples gently. Frogs rest on its rim. Their calls ring out in perfect intervals, like monks with invisible bells. She dips a hand into the pool. "This is the Yahe Kase," she whispers, "the pool of knowing." The elders of her village come here not to watch, but to listen. They say the frogs carry knowledge not only of weather, but of time's texture. The way a season feels before it arrives, the change in wind before the rain, the silence before a shift in the world. You lie down on a woven blanket beside the pool. The air is thinner here, but pure. You breathe deeply. The frogs sing. One of them, she tells you, hasn't sung in 3 years, a rare high-altitude harlequin frog, once thought lost to the cold. "But last month," she whispers, "we heard it again." To them it meant the balance had shifted, that some old truth, forgotten by science, was quietly reawakening. Scientists today study these frogs with urgency. Many are endangered, their numbers shrinking with each shift in temperature. And yet, here in this mountain garden, they sing. Some still argue whether their return is real, she says, her voice soft now. Those of us who live here, we don't argue, we listen. You hear a frog croak now once in an unusually high pitch, almost a whistle. The others pause, then resume, but slower, lower. The moon is changing, she says. You glance upward. It hasn't risen yet, and still they know. She speaks of one final ritual. Once each year, on the night before the June solstice, her people gather in this garden. They do not bring clocks or candles, only water, leaves, memory. They wait for the frogs to begin. When the frogs croak 3 times without interruption, a young boy or girl takes the first seed and plants it in the soil. That sound marks the official beginning of the new agricultural year. It has always worked, she says, even when the sun does not shine, even when the calendar is wrong. She tells you a story then, of a great-grandmother who once taught her to place a frog inside a hollowed gourd, half filled with river water, and hang it outside her window. If the frog sang at night, the day would be wet. If it was sun, the sun would hold. She did it for 50 years, and was almost never wrong. You feel the pool's warmth beside you. The frogs continue their careful ancient rhythms. You wonder, how many clocks have been disguised as ponds? How many warnings whispered from leaves? The woman pours a few drops of spring water into your hand. This, she says, is time. You hold it, and it slips through your fingers soft and cold. But the frogs still sing. You close your eyes, and the mountain listens. You feel the air shift again, warmer now, thicker, growing with night flowers and something unmistakably wet. Water, not just a stream or trickle, but a land made of water. And you've arrived in Southeast Asia, not in one nation but across them, in the jungled curves of Cambodia, the rice-stitched hills of Vietnam, the broad braided deltas of Thailand, and the wet green veins of Laos, where the earth itself beats to a rhythm only frogs seem to fully understand. You don't walk into this place. You're carried on a long, narrow boat gliding through a slow-moving river. The paddles slice soundlessly. The water reflects stars so clearly it's like rowing through the sky. The boatman doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The frogs do. You hear them all around. Soft, repetitive croaks pulsing from reeds, tree roots, temple steps, and flooded paddies. Their chorus is hypnotic, unfolding not like a choir, but like a pulse. And your own heartbeat seems to synchronize without you meaning to. The boat slows. You step off onto a bank lined with lotus. Fireflies drift between the stalks like airborne embers. A small boy in a faded red shirt waits barefoot, holding a bamboo torch. He smiles. You came during the frog hour. You ask what he means, he leads you into the jungle. The frogs grow louder. In my village, he says, the elders say frogs are the soundtrack of rice. He waves his hand outward. You can't see them yet, but you can feel them. The miles upon miles of rice paddies carved into the landscape like green mirrors, each one depending not on machines or clocks, but frogs. For us, he continues, frogs tell the calendar. In much of pre-modern Southeast Asia, rice wasn't just a crop, it was a cosmic rhythm, a relationship between sky and soil, water and moon, frog and man. And in this system, frogs weren't pests or background noise, they were timekeepers. The boy guides you to the edge of a flooded field. The moon now reflects perfectly off the surface. Frogs sit perched on submerged stalks, spaced evenly apart as if following some invisible code. 1 croak, he says, means the rain is 1 day away. 2 means it's already over the mountain. 3, he pauses, means get the boats ready. You listen. 1 frog croaks, then 2 others answer. Then silence, a brief hush. Then the pattern repeats. See, he says, 2 tonight. We sleep dry. This knowledge, simple, soothing, and rooted in generational listening, was once common across the region. Farmers rose before the sun to count frog calls before touching their tools. Children learned to predict downpours by the rhythm of croaking heard before dawn. And when the frog stopped, you stay home, the boy whispers, or climb. Because no silence was louder than the frogs going quiet. Your walk takes you now toward a temple, crumbling moss slick carved from stone that still radiates the warmth of an ancient sun. Lichen and vine crawl across bas-reliefs of kings and gods, dancers and battles, but also frogs, dozens of them, carved onto the corners of steps, curled beneath lotus flowers, perched on the heads of naga serpents. You touch one. They're everywhere, you whisper. An old monk, robed in saffron and smiling softly, emerges from the shadows. He bows slightly. You found the frog temple, he says. He leads you in. Candles flicker against weathered murals showing rice fields under rain. Monks standing with bowls beneath palm trees. And always, somewhere in the corners, a frog. The monk gestures toward a mural of a massive bullfrog wearing a golden crown. She is called Medeng in our legends, he says. The frog goddess, she swallowed the rain when the people grew greedy, and when they humbled themselves, she released it. You ask if she was real. He shrugs. She still sings, doesn't she? He tells you about the royal ploughing ceremony once held in ancient Siam, now Thailand. Before kings planted symbolic furrows, monks would observe frogs near sacred lakes. If the frogs sang loudly in the days before, it was believed to be a sign of abundant rains and blessings. If they were sent, omens turned dark. Even today in rural areas, some rice planters still begin their season not by checking apps or forecasts, but by waiting for the right frog. In particular, the Asian common toad and the cricket frog are known to become unusually vocal just before the monsoon. Science now explains this with humidity shifts, temperature cues, and barometric pressure readings. But here, the frogs are still the first prophets. The monk guides you to the back of the temple, where a natural spring bubbles through carved stone and flows out through a channel once used to cleanse harvest tools. Frogs gather here, dozens of them. They sing all night, he says, even when no one listens. He places a cup of water into your hands. Drink. This is called rain memory. You sip. It tastes of limestone, leaves, and some wordless stillness you cannot name. He sits beside you. In the old stories, he continues, it was said that when a person died without family, the frogs would sing at their burial, not as grief, but as recognition. You ask what they were recognizing, that the soul was returning to water. He tells you that frogs are revered not just because they forecast weather, but because they transform. From egg to tadpole to adult, they mirror the Buddhist journey of impermanence. They are the reminder that all things change, he says, and still they come back. Outside, the frog song begins to shift. The pitch lowers, the rhythm slows. They're marking the last watch of the night, the monk whispers. Soon the birds will take over. And just like that, you begin to hear it. The first gentle notes of a nightjar, then the soft fluting of a bulbul in the distance. But the frogs still have one verse left. You lie back against the cool stone, the air is damp, almost sweet. You close your eyes, and from somewhere beyond the temple, a choir of frogs sings a final song. Measured, ancient, familiar, not as noise but as a lullaby. Because here in the river-carved world of Southeast Asia, time is water. It rises, it floods, it seeps and evaporates and returns. And at every stage of its cycle, the frogs are waiting. They know when the sky will crack, when the earth is ready, when your body is too tired to keep walking and needs only to float. So you do. You drift through lily fields and temple shadows, through the memory of rain and stone, and the frogs sing on. You awaken without moving. You don't open your eyes. You don't stretch. You simply become aware of air so dry it hums, of a ground beneath you that feels both ancient and alive, and of a quiet so full it feels like it's listening to you. You are in the outback now, Australia's red heart, land of stone and sky, of dry rivers and sudden floods, of shadow-dancing trees and long silent horizons. The air smells of dust and eucalyptus, of cracked rock and something older, like lightning that struck centuries ago and never quite left the air. There is no croaking here, not yet. You sit up slowly and look around. The sky is enormous, so blue it almost aches. The trees, sparse, twisted, silvered by sun, stand like quiet elders watching everything. And under your bare feet the soil is hard-packed and copper-red. Then a whisper, not a voice, not a wind, but a shift, somewhere in the ground. You kneel, and you feel it. Stillness with a heartbeat. A woman appears beside you. Her skin is the colour of sun-age bark, her hair long and tied back with strips of ochre cloth. She carries nothing but a stick and a shallow wooden bowl. She doesn't greet you with words, just a look, as if to say, "You're on sacred time now. Listen." She taps the ground lightly. "They're still sleeping," she says. "Who, you ask?" She smiles. "The frogs." You blink. There's no water here, no stream, no pond, no damp leaf to shelter under, just hard earth and sun. But she kneels and digs gently, no shovel, no tools, just her fingers and the stick. And after only a few scoops, she stops. From the bowl she pours a single ladle of water into the hole, and then waits. Seconds pass, then a stir, and from beneath the soil, emerging slowly as if waking from a dream, comes a frog. Pale, round, blinking slowly. You hold your breath, and this is the water-holding frog, one of Australia's many desert amphibians that survive in a land with no calendar, no clocks, and no certainty of rain. She lifts it gently. "They know when the rains are coming," she says, "even before the sky does." You learn now that Aboriginal Australians, especially in the central and northern regions, track time not in hours but in cycles of sound, and one of the most sacred sounds was the first croak after long silence. It could mean rain, or it could mean a dreaming shift, the moment when an ancestral story needed to be told again, through dance, paint, or song. The woman walks with you through dry spinifex and ghost gums. She shows you a tree with ochre handprints sprayed across its base and etched into the stone beside it, a frog glyph. "This place," she says, "belongs to Guruwari." You ask what that means. "Seed power," she says, "the pattern of life beneath everything. The frogs carry it, in their bodies, in their sleep." And some Aboriginal stories describe frogs as the carriers of time, creatures who sleep through entire seasons, only to wake when the land is ready to change. Scientists today confirm it. Many Australian frogs, like the desert spadefoot or the water-holding frog, can burrow underground and remain dormant for up to 5 years, waiting patiently for enough rain to resurface, breed, and then disappear again. They're not bound by clocks, she says, only by truth. You kneel beside another patch of cracked earth. She hands you the stick. Try, she whispers. You dig carefully, pour water into the hole and wait. And again, the earth moves. Another frog, blinking up at you like a living relic. You ask how people used to tell time with them. She tells you that rain ceremonies once began not with clouds, but with the first frog song. That when the elders heard a certain croak at dusk, they would gather the community, not just to prepare the shelters and dig drainage lines, but to retell the song lines. These were maps made of sound, stories that describe the landscape not with directions, but with rhythm, melody, and animal voices. The frogs sing at the same place in the same song, she says. They are the verse of water. Even now, she tells you, some Aboriginal groups know when to leave a place, when to travel to the next waterhole, based on when certain frogs stop singing. They don't lie, she adds. In a land where seasonal cues can vary wildly from year to year, frogs are trusted more than the sky. She leads you to a billabong, still shallow, ringed with mud and dotted with tufts of grass. The sun is lower now, the sky blushes with peach and rust. And then, finally, you hear it. A single croak. Dry, short, like a stone tapping hollow wood. Then another, deeper, longer. Then silence. You glance at her. She's smiling. That's the Ngamu call, she says. It means the red moon will rise tonight. You look up. Nothing yet. But the frogs know, she adds. She tells you that in some dreaming stories the moon and the frog are kin. One holds light, the other holds time. When the moon disappears, the frogs fall silent. When it returns, they begin again. In parts of Arnhem Land, frogs are believed to sing the moon into fullness, their croaks rising with the lunar curve. In other regions, children are taught to mimic frog calls while drawing circles in the sand, connecting sound with shape, time with space. You sit now beside the billabong. The frogs are louder, not many, not chaotic, just certain, like breathing, like memory. The woman hands you a smooth round stone carved with tiny frog footprints spiralling inward. This is your time marker, she says, not to count the hours, but to remember the moment. You close your fingers around it. It's warm. The frogs sing. The moon begins to rise. Red, full, heavy, and you lie back in the sand. The air cools. The woman hums a low melody. A lullaby, she says, sung to infants when the frogs first croak after the dry. To teach them that they are home, she whispers. And you are. In a place where time is not told but kept, under the surface, inside a frog, waiting, just like sleep. You lie still, the sand of the outback still clings to your skin warm and fine, but something shifts under your body. It is wetter now, the smell of eucalyptus fades, replaced by something gentler, sweetgrass, decaying leaves, cedar, and the crisp sharpness of pine. The air is cooler, still but not silent. You are lying on peat, spongy and soft, on the edge of a vast wetland. You've arrived in North America, not in the cities or the plains, but the in-between places, where forest meets swamp, where river meets sky, where time doesn't tick, but pulses. The land around you is dusky, held in that perfect balance of light where day and night seem to breathe each other in, and the frogs are waiting, not in the trees, not in the dry cracks of red earth, but in the reeds, the mud, the shallow pools that stretch between the roots of ancient cypress and maple. They're everywhere, not loud, not yet, but present, as if they are deciding whether this is the moment. You sit up. A woman stands nearby, wrapped in woven wool, embroidered with patterns of leaves and rivers. Her braids fall past her waist. She holds a hand drum taut with hide, painted with the image of a frog mid-leap, limbs extended, mouth open in song. She nods. You've come in the listening moon. You follow her across a narrow boardwalk, soft moss hanging on either side like drapes. The frogs begin now, one by one, a chirp here, a trill there, the air vibrates. Not many people listen anymore, she says, but they used to, all across the land. She speaks of her people, the Anishinaabe, whose calendar does not divide the year by numbered months, but by moons. Each moon is named not for a god or a number, but for an event, something real, felt, shared. And among them, one of the most sacred is the frog moon. Sometimes it comes in April, she says, sometimes in March. It changes, like all real things do, but when it arrives, everyone knows. The frog moon is not just a marker of spring, it is a promise that the cold is broken, that ice is receding, that the land is waking. It is the first full chorus after the silence of snow, and for thousands of years it meant plant your seeds, mend your nets, clean your steps. Before our people counted days, she says, we listened for frogs. And it wasn't just the Anishinaabe. Among the Haudenosaunee, the Catawba, the Cherokee, the Tlingit, and dozens more indigenous cultures, frogs were deeply woven into the seasonal understanding of time. In some stories, frogs were sky callers who summoned rain by singing. In others, they were dream messengers, carrying visions between the water and the stars. In many places, children would be told, when the frogs sing, Grandmother Earth is breathing again. You ask how they could be so sure. She smiles and taps her drum once. Boom! A deep, soft pulse. They never lied, she says. Even before thermometers or radios or maps, our people could feel the change, in the wind, in the trees. But the frogs, they said it first. She leads you to a small circle of stones, arranged around a pool fed by a slow, winding creek. Above, branches of birch and tamarack shiver in the soft breeze. The frogs here are louder. Timekeepers, tiny but mighty, each one capable of making your heart skip a beat with a single chirp. They're telling the maple keepers it's time, she says. You ask, for what? She smiles. The sap. Indeed, into many northern cultures, the return of frog song is still used to time the tapping of maple trees. The sap flows just as the frogs awaken, when days are above freezing, but nights still kiss the earth with frost. A rhythm as precise as any clock. You kneel beside the pool. She shows you how to cup your ears with your hands, directing the sound. What seemed scattered and chaotic now becomes layered, organized. You can hear it clearly now. The three-note trill, the staccato click, the long-held croak. They're not just calling mates, she says. They're marking territory, space, season, cycle. You sit in silence together. Then she begins to drum, softly, rhythmically, in time with the frogs. Boom, pause, boom, boom. A rhythm older than history. She sings too, words in her language, not translated but felt. It's a lullaby for the land, one meant to help the frogs know they are welcome, they are heard, they are part of the family of time. You learn now of the green frog, a species once revered in many indigenous tales as a guardian of water roots. If they sang late in the season, it was a warning not to travel. If they stopped mid-song, it meant someone had crossed a boundary of respect. And of the wood frog, whose ability to survive freezing temperatures made it sacred. Some tribes believed it held the secret to resurrection, dying each winter and being reborn without pain. A living metaphor for the earth's own cycle of sleep and wake. She tells you of a ritual performed in early spring where families would sit in a circle by a pond and call to the frogs, not with drums, but with echoes. Repeating the frog calls back to them, as if asking, "Are you still here? Is the time still right?" And when the frogs answered, it was like the land saying yes. You ask if people still do it. Some, she says, in whispers, in stories, around fire pits and canoe landings, but fewer each year. Still the frogs remember. You look down into the water. Tiny bubbles rise, then plop. A frog emerges, eyes bright, body slick with moonlight. She nods at it. That one, she says, croaks only when the moon is full. Scientists argue about this. Some say it's about visibility, easier to find mates under the light. Others suggest temperature. Some believe frogs coordinate breeding during full moons to overwhelm predators with sheer numbers. But we always knew, she says, that the moon and the frog are sisters. One sings, one reflects, one reminds. You lie back now on soft moss. The sky is clear, scattered with stars. The full moon hangs above you, swollen and silver. The frogs rise to meet it. Thousands of voices now, spring peepers, chorus frogs, bullfrogs, all layered together in a sonic map of the night. Each call is a location, a signal, a pulse, and somewhere inside you a part that still remembers how to live without clocks understands perfectly. This is how you tell time, not with alarms, not with deadlines, but with being, with listening. You drift, the drum slows, the woman hums a final note, and the frogs, oh the frogs, keep time gently until the sky turns pale again. The sky above you is lightening now, not with dawn, not yet, but with that deep indigo that comes when night begins to loosen its grip. You sit up slowly. The moss is damp beneath your palms, and the scent of frog song lingers in the air like incense. The woman is gone. The forest too. Instead, you find yourself standing in a lab, but not the sterile kind. No buzzing fluorescents, no clattering machines. This one is soft lit, filled with terrariums, small lamps, notes scribbled in pencil, and pinned beside the glass. You walk slowly past a long counter where jars hold frogs in every shade of green, brown, blue, even a few golden-hued ones blinking at you from the stillness of carefully crafted habitats. A man in a wrinkled white coat and wool socks appears from behind a wall of bookshelves. He pushes his glasses up the bridge of his nose and smiles. "You made it," he says. "I thought you might." You ask, "What is this place?" He gestures to the frogs. "This," he says, "is time, as memory, as echo, as code." He holds up a notebook, its cover worn soft with years of handling. On the first page, a drawing of a frog not anatomically precise, but lovingly done. Childlike. He chuckles. "That was my daughter's. When she was 7. She said frogs were like rain clocks, and she was right." You follow him, past a display of preserved frog skeletons, past framed photographs of wetlands, temples, mountain tops, and deserts, places you've just come from, impossibly. Your mind doesn't question it. You're moving through time now, not just in it. He stops beside a table covered in printouts. Charts, graphs, waveforms. You lean in. Each graph shows the audio pattern of a frog species, the spikes and valleys of its croaks rendered into visual rhythm. One has a note beneath it. 3-note call at 92 BPM matches rainfall onset. He taps that one. "This species," he says, "has predicted monsoon shifts with 87% accuracy, better than some satellite models." You blink, but he's already moving on. "There's a reason we listen to frogs," he says, almost absently. "We say it's instinct, that it's comforting, familiar, but really, it's because they are mirrors." He hands you a small recorder. "Want to hear your own pulse next to a fog's?" You nod. He presses record, then gently places the device inside a terrarium with a Pacific tree frog, a tiny creature with eyes too large for its face and skin the colour of late spring leaves. You hear the frog chirp, soft, sharp, rhythmically steady. Then you place your fingers on your neck, your pulse joins in, and something remarkable happens. For 3 beats, you sink. Your pulse matches the frog's call exactly. He smiles. It's not magic, he says. It's biology. It's memory. You evolved alongside these sounds. Our ancestors fell asleep to them, rose to them, marked the return of food, of warmth, of planting time, of birth, to them. You begin to realize these frogs are not just wild things. They are timekeepers of evolution. In another tank you see glass frogs, transparent-skinned beings whose beating hearts are visible through their bellies. The man whispers, "We study them to understand circulatory repair, one day maybe even heart regeneration." He opens a drawer. Some frogs haven't changed in 200 million years, he says. They have survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, supervolcanoes. Entire civilizations came and went, and the frogs kept singing. You remember the desert woman? They sleep through time, you say. He nods. And when they wake up, they carry the past forward. That's more than survival, that's continuity. You sit on a bench beside a tank with African clawed frogs, the very same species used in the Mool-30s as pregnancy detectors. Scientists would inject them with a woman's urine. If the frog laid eggs, the test was positive. The first biological pregnancy test, he says. Thousands of births predicted by frogs. You smile. It's absurd, beautiful, strangely poetic. He shows you another corner, less tidy. Stacks of folders, some marked crisis, others recovery. These, he says, are the lost songs. Species of frogs whose calls haven't been heard in years. Entire choruses gone silent due to habitat loss, pollution, disease. The chytrid fungus, he says solemnly, wiped out hundreds. It's why we archive their songs. Even if they vanish, their time signal will still exist. You ask if that makes a difference. He nods. Sound carries presence. It's the last thing that disappears. He leads you outside onto a deck overlooking a small man-made wetland. Beyond it, city lights, but here in the centre, frogs are croaking, loudly, joyfully. These were rescued, he says, some from pet trades, some from construction zones. They still sing every night. The moon is high now. Above you, city stars flicker dimly. Below, the frogs keep time. You sit in the hush. And he says, "You've seen it all, haven't you?" You pause, then nod. He points out across the water. "So now you know," he says. "Time was never the tick, or the tock. It was always the swell, the chirp, the pause between croaks, the first song after silence." He presses something into your hand. It's a smooth round stone like the one from the outback. Except this one has a recording chip inside. "A chorus from the Amazon," he says. "It plays when you sleep. Gentle frequency, syncs your breathing, works better than melatonin." You laugh, but he's serious. Then he steps back, fades into the doorway, and leaves you with the frogs. Their song rises gently, not in crescendo, but in spiral, soft trills, low pulses, rhythmic chimes in the throats of small breathing metronomes. And you lie back, right where this journey began, by water, under stars, and with your heartbeat in someone else's mouth, and the frogs singing you home. And now, let everything soften. Let your arms grow heavy beside you. Let your breath stretch just a little longer, just a little slower. Let your eyelids fall, not with weight, but with warmth. You've travelled far tonight, from jungle ponds to mountaintop pools, from desert sands to cloud forest springs, from temples, fire circles, lab benches, and moonlit marshes, and everywhere you went, there they were. The frogs, watching, sleeping, waiting, singing. You followed their voices across centuries. You listened to their rhythm shape rice, awaken seeds, predict storms and signal dreams. You heard them sung into stories carved into stone, folded into lullabies and recorded into the memory of Earth itself. And now you return not to clocks, not to alarms, but to stillness. Because sleep is not an escape from time, It is a return to real time, your breath, your pulse, and your own quiet chorus inside your chest. So if your thoughts wander, let them. If you hear the echoes of frogs still singing, don't silence them. Let them carry you. Let them remind you you're alive, you are ancient, you're enough. And the world, however noisy it may seem, still knows how to hold you gently. In frog song, in time, in dreams. Good night.